I finally finished Iron Gold. Iron Gold is the 4th book in the Red Rising saga, and it sort of acts as a bridge between the original trilogy and the rest of the series. This takes place 10 years after the last book, Morning Star. So that means that Darrow and our whole crew are in their 30s, they have kids, they're dealing with this new form of government that they fought so hard to actually set up, and they're struggling to keep things under control. Iron Gold very much expands the world of Red Rising, most notably through the fact that there are 4 point of views in this book. We still get to hear from Darrow, and then there are 3 new characters. Lysander, so that was the Sovereign's grandson. Lyria, who was still living on Mars as a Red, and Ephraim, a kind of sleazy gray who is sort of for hire for any type of criminal activity that you would like. So I know that there's sort of a conversation of, do you need this? I think the Red Rising trilogy really, it's very much tied up with a nice little bow at the end of it. And there was a part of me that was like hesitating going into this, because even though I was really excited, reading the back of it, I was like, oh, this is gonna be so good. Like, I wanna see Lysander, I wanna see all these people. I still was like, I like where we left things, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to mess that up, because this is kind of hefty for like, I'll just take a chance on it. I'm glad I did. This is not my favorite book in the series so far, but I hear that it is very much worth this setup to get to the next book. So I can't say for sure if it's worth reading Iron Gold, but I'm gonna guess yes, because I really do think Pierce Brown is a fantastic writer, and I'm really excited to see where all the setup in this book leads in Dark Age. With that, goodbye to all of my spoiler-free people. If you have not read it, go read the book and come back so we can discuss. Okay, so I was very excited to hear from Lysander. We know that at the end of the last book, Cassian adopted him, sort of. A lot of people do mistake them for brothers, and I was really interested to see how Lysander handled being Cassius's ward, essentially, because Cassius really was on the opposing side to his grandmother, played an active part in her death, so I didn't know how he would turn out, if he was going to be like very brooding or just very curious, because that's how he was as a child, and I do feel like he leans that way. But I remember specifically on my last video saying like, I'm so excited to talk to Lysander, and then somebody putting in the comments like, you'll change your tune. I did a little bit, not gonna lie. Lysander, I think his perspective was really good, but at the same time I was like, name one thing you've done successfully, quickly.
What do you do successfully? Quickly.
Lysander very much sees himself as a scholar as opposed to a fighter. Even though his grandfather was Lorne and he does know like enough to be passable when it comes to fighting, but that's really not his like main thing. And he is out in the solar system somewhere with Cassius. They go on to a ship that they sort of cross paths with, essentially, and they go inside and they find like tons and tons of dead bodies. They end up finding like a room full of people who have been like trapped in these cages, and they're all lower colors, and then there's this one gold girl who's been like hung up in this sort of hammock situation, and Cassius is like, look, Lysander, like, we need to get out of here because the people who own the ship are coming. I don't remember who exactly. Yeah, it's fine. And he doesn't want to get into a battle because it's just him and Lysander, and who knows how many people are still on this ship. And so he's like, we can get these people that are like, you know, already out of their cages, and we gotta go. Like, quit worrying about this gold girl who appears to be dead. But Lysander, setting the path for the rest of everything, disobeys Cassius and cuts her down. And then this girl, out of nowhere, flips the script on him, steals his razor, and like runs away. Clearly not on our side. And Lysander cut her down just because like she was beautiful and a gold and he didn't want to leave her behind. I was like, do you see what you've done? We get fully captured because of this girl. Meanwhile, back to Mustang and Darrow, who are married and trying to hold it together as Mustang being the sovereign. People are not doing amazing in this new society that they've built. There's a lot of upheaval still. Darrow has, you know, continued to be a fighter overall. When there was unrest, I think it was on Venus, he didn't respond with like, let's fix it. He responded with like, let's take them out. And that has begun to cause problems for people. And the problem was Darrow had done that even though there had been a call for a ceasefire between the Society and the Rising. And so that obviously, like, a lot of people are very upset with Mustang, and it makes it even harder because Darrow's her husband. So they're like, of course they're gonna back each other, even though they don't always back each other's decisions. We meet a new character, Ephraim. He's a gray who is just sort of like, you can hire him to do criminal activity of your choice. He just seems like he's sort of a freelancer in that way. And so we learn a little bit about his backstory, how his fiance had died really tragically, and he's sort of been a part of this, I don't know if I want to call him like a band of thieves, but it has sort of a found family vibe without being super close. Like, they are together for business for the most part. He's considering killing himself, basically. He's gotten to such a low point and he misses his fiance so much. He's been self-medicating for years, trying to like feel better. Right before he jumps, he gets like pulled back by somebody and knocked out. We leave that there for a second to go back to Cassius and Lysander. They haven't been captured quite yet. They made it back to their ship with the gold girl, and Lysander realizes that she's one of the peerless scarred, and he doesn't tell Cassius, which is like the stupidest decision. Like, I don't think Cassius always has the best like judgment either, but he's gonna be better off than you, Lysander. I'm so frustrated with him so much of the time. And we start getting like pulled in by this other ship. Cut to Darrow, who is trying to rally his crew again. And it's been 10 years. So he's trying to get the Howlers and he's trying to get the Obsidians to go with him. To fight who? I don't remember. There was so much of this book that like I just felt like I couldn't keep mental track of it. And maybe it's because I wasn't reading the whole thing like with my eyeballs. Like, I was listening to some of it, and I think sometimes I don't always log the names when I'm listening to that. But like half the Howlers, it's understandable. Like, they're real adults now with children and families and people that they don't want to leave. It's not like they're just going to die themselves if they go. Like, they really are leaving behind families and putting them in a bad spot if they do. So there's people who are like, I'm tired of this life. Like, I don't want to do this anymore, which I fully understood. And I feel like Darrow sort of does. And Severo is doing his best to like rally people. But at the end of the day, like, Severo also has daughters and he doesn't want to leave them. And Victra, reminder, his wife, is like, yeah, he's just acting like a young man, but like, he's not anymore. And so things are looking down, especially when Sephi, the queen of the Obsidians, is like, Darrow, like, love you, but you're on your own, basically. We also meet Lyria. So she is a red who was in the mines in Mars, and then when Darrow and his friends won, they were released, and part of their initiatives of the new like society that they're putting together was to get those people in the mines out and to help them live a prosperous life on Mars, but it's sort of only halfway done. So Lyria and her family are in this camp, and Lyria is at the point where it's like, it would have been better if we had just stayed in the mines because the camps they're so bad off. This is when the Red Hand lands, and her younger brother goes to check it out, and these people basically came as exterminators, which is horrifying. They come through, like, first of all, she watches her brother get shot through the chest. It's horrifying. And then like the camp, it like erupts with people running, and so like they have to leave their dad behind, who like physically can't, you know, run for his life. She's got one of her nephews, her sister with all the other babies is running, and it's so horrible. And I really didn't expect like her to lose everyone except for the one nephew that she had with her. Her walking through like the fields of the dead, trying to figure out if her sister and baby nieces and nephews were like among them, was truly horrible. And Lyria quickly realizes like there's nothing left for her here other than her nephew. There's nothing tying her to Mars. There's no reason for her to stay. It's not like they were well off before the Red Hand like exploded their entire camp. So she ends up saving Cavix Al-Telemanus. I have a hard time saying their names, but he had somehow crashed into the water / ocean, and all these other Reds were watching, and they're like, not gonna be doing that. And so she goes after him. Reminder that Lyria is probably the size of a cricket compared to Cavix, and she manages to save him from drowning. And she's like, as for payment, like, will you please take me and my nephew away from Mars because there's nothing for us here. And Kavix agrees. He says he can put Liam in a school when they get there and that she can basically be part of his like servants. And he does it in such a sweet way. He's like, you know, I don't know, but then apparently he had slipped something in her pocket so that his fox pretended to really like her, or was like trying to get a treat or something. And so he's like, you have been chosen. And I love the Tom and his family. Every time we see them, they do something just kind of quirky like that. Like, I just remember Pax yelling his name anytime he was trying to attack someone, and I just loved that so much. It broke my heart. Like I was saying before, when Victra is talking to Darrow. Victra's like 8 months pregnant at this point, and she tells Darrow, like, please do not go after the Ash Lord with my husband. Like, please leave Severo here this time. And she's like, I have quite literally never asked you for anything in my life. Oh my gosh, this is where it's mentioned. So when we got to the end of the book and we were talking about Atlantia, I was like, who is this girl? She's, okay, the Ash Lord's daughter. And Victra even says, like, Atlantia will still be alive if you kill the Ash Lord. And then Darrow's like, well, you know, like, she's a soldier. She's not her father. Oh my gosh. I didn't clock that at all. Anyways, Darrow tells Victra, like, look, I cannot control your husband. If I trick him and leave him here, which is the only way he'll let me leave him here, he will come after me in a slower ship and it'll be bad. And I think they just both acknowledge, like, there is no telling Severo what to do. He is unhinged. And then we have Mustang also, like, making this heartbreaking appeal to him to just be like, please don't leave for the Ash Lord. Like, you can stay here with me. And she's like, the people are not going to approve of this move, first of all. They are tired of war. They don't want to deal with the Ash Lord. And she's like, if you do this, it really puts me at jeopardy because, like, the world generally thinks they're husband and wife and that they're going to kind of dictate what the other one does, which I don't think is ever the case. Those two really stick to their convictions despite what the other one says, which is something I do kind of like about their relationship. But when they're talking like this, Mustang says, like, why do you fight and continue to do this like you think you're supposed to die? Do you think you're supposed to follow her? Her meaning Io, his first wife from his life as a Red. And that was just like, it was just so heartbreaking because I do feel like Darrow, he just always feels like there's something pushing him to do more, and like he never is able to rest. And I feel like he's never been able to like fully enjoy being a parent or being in his family because it's just always been so much unrest around him. And I think because like he's so used to that state, the idea of like resting and, you know, trying to do things diplomatically and not just going to war is like just so foreign to him that he can't shake it. Upon leaving Mars, Lyria meets Philippe, who is actually Ephraim. He knows that Lyria sort of has an in to these families, like they're not royal families, what are they? Ruling families, but for a republic. Anyway, he has targeted her. And I was along with Lyria like, okay, weird, but nice that this guy's taking us out to dinner. I did not clock that it was Ephraim at first. Oh, in no way. I just thought that Philippe was like this random character. And he calls her Rabbit, and I had no idea. I don't know if I missed it, but I just had not a single clue how old this man was. I thought he was like 60. And so like, why are we at dinner with a 60-year-old Lyria? And then he's like calling her Rabbit and being super nice. I was like, I don't like that it feels like kind of romantic. I think that's not it at all. But like in that moment, I was like, this is deeply uncomfortable. Is Lyria about to become a sugar baby? And meanwhile, a real romance is budding with Lysander and Seraphina, the girl that we saved off of this other ship, who is like a peerless scarred and just like not at all good news, Lysander. Lysander comes across very innocent. As far as we know, he has like never been in a relationship before. He is like kind of nerdy, and she seems much more like the warrior type. And so I like that like dynamic between characters. Like, I don't know if it's a trope, but it's something that I enjoy, where one of them is more like the nerd and one of them is more like the fighter. And so I don't mind that, but I do mind the fact that Seraphine is so mean. And like Lysander it's just like, he doesn't ever have his guard up, ever. He just, I don't understand him. I was like, yeah, she's pretty, but like, you need to pull it together, my guy. Meanwhile, we're on Darrow's ship. We had to kill one of our friends, what's his name? I don't remember. But like, on our way out, like the people were coming to arrest Darrow or put him on trial or something. It was like a time sensitive issue. And Mustang is like, Darrow, do not go. And Darrow's like, Darrow, go. He tries to get out of there. And he accidentally kills one of his friends, which is horrible. And then he's like getting Severo. And Severo's like, wait for me. And they shoot off into space with like their howlers and stuff. I was so frustrated. I was like, if we had waited like 10 minutes, like I understand. But like the howlers would have gotten Darrow out of jail. It's not like it was truly time sensitive the way it felt in that moment. And we didn't have to kill one of our friends, especially in front of Pax, his son. That goodbye was absolutely horrible because Pax is talking to Darrow and he really seems like a sweet kid. He was obviously very angry at Darrow for leaving, and I feel like it's understandable. Like I sort of feel like it was giving off like he was being a little like bratty, but not in a way that was not understandable because his dad is always off at war and they don't have this time to bond. And like the small moments that they have had together just feel like sort of tinged by the fact that he's never there. And so when he's saying to his dad, like, I basically was like, I'm not gonna forgive you if you leave. And Darrow does it anyway. Then we see Severo with his girls. He has a very opposite relationship with his kids. For whatever reason, Severo is great with children. And his daughters just love him so much and he doesn't want to leave them. It was just, that was sad to see. But when we're finally in our ship, and we're looking around on this sort of thing that like I guess labels heat signatures or something like that. But we see that we have a stowaway on board. At this point, I had forgotten that Darrow's younger niece is like learning to fight. I don't know where she is exactly as far as like army rankings basically. But she wanted to go with Darrow. She wanted to fight. And Darrow's brother was like, please do me this one favor, do not take her with you. And he was like, absolutely not, she doesn't have enough training anyways. And she's stowed away on board. So, whether we like it or not, that niece is with us. Back with Lyria, she's around the kiddos of all of the families. And she runs into Pax. And this is why I think Pax is a good kid, is because like when he was talking to Lyria, he really cared about like knowing her name, knowing who the people are around him. He like has that respect, and it clearly comes from like a good representation of like his father doing that type of stuff. So I feel like not all is lost there, but we don't get to see them together much because Lyria's necklace jumps off of her neck, floats about, and explodes. This was a necklace from Ephraim/Philippe. And so this bomb is going off, and the children get stolen. Ephraim is there to do it. So earlier, back when Ephraim got like punched, knocked out right before he was gonna kill himself, he got taken to this guy who is a criminal something or other. Seriously, there were way too many names in this book. I apologize. But like a warlord, criminal overlord of some sort. The guy that you do not refuse or they kill you anyways. And he said, Ephraim, you're gonna go steal these kids and bring them back to me. And Ephraim was like, I don't want to do that, but he also didn't want to die, and he didn't want the rest of his crew to die because that was sort of an implied like consequence, I think. And so he pulls all of his friends together and they do this one job, and it does not rest well with any of them, especially Volga. She is an obsidian who Ephraim had saved from slavery or some sort of really bad situation. And so she feels indebted to him, even though she doesn't want to do this at all. And she seems like very sweet, actually. But anyway, they take the kids, and Lyria's there like, oh my gosh, it is my fault that all these kids are getting stolen from their parents. And then she's like about to die. Ephraim is there standing over her with the gun, like about to kill her. And he has this like internal monologue of like, I told myself I would be able to do this. He really likes Lyria. And he's like, I told myself that I was gonna be able to kill her. Like I knew this was coming. I knew this was part of the job, and he just can't do it. So he steals her too. It was very upsetting to watch Kavix like trying to chase after them and like physically not being able to do it. That was a hard scene. At one point, Lysander has this thought of like, and like I guess like I knew this, But being Octavia's grandson, Lysander was in line to become sovereign at some point. And for him, like, I guess like he still continues to think about that, because of course you would, but I guess I didn't think about it that much. And he's like having this thought, he's like, yeah, like at one point I should have been sovereign. And I was like, Lysander, that is an inside thought, thank you. But it does sort of plant a little seed in there of me being like, this kid is maybe not as kind and cute as I thought at one point. Also, Cassius and Lysander have been like captured by the people whose ship pulled them in, and so they have also disguised themselves as like other people. They used fake names, because if people find out that they're the Bologna son, and then like what's his last name? The grandson of the past sovereign, that is not gonna bode super well for them. And so they've taken on these fake personas, but they get found out because Lysander, again, he kept like some sort of razor or something, and he had hidden it, but it would very clearly mark someone as a Bologna. And when they find it, they eventually like figure out their real identities, and they get put in a duel. Not both of them. They've decided to keep Lysander for some reason. And they put Cassius in a duel. And so they bring out these different members of the family. And so I can't remember their last name, but it is Seraphina's parents. And they bring out multiples. And Seraphina watches like her brother and sister die, I think, and a cousin, because the mom, Dion, something, she keeps sending people to die. And Lysander's watching from the sidelines like, this woman is gonna let so many people of her family die because she wants to stir up this anger in them. Meanwhile, Cassius is like a master swordsman, and so he's knocking people down left and right, but of course he's taking blows and he's getting more and more tired. And then Seraphina's mom sends Seraphina in to fight against Cassius. And I was like, listen, I understand that she could be like an expert swordsman, and she is. Like, she is often like the assassin for her family. She's the one. But at the same time, Cassius is like a massive peerless guard, and you're gonna send your youngest daughter in to take care of him? Anyways, Lysander makes sure that that stops before it can actually happen, but it doesn't matter. I wish I could remember what exactly went down during that moment, but Lysander is knocked out or something. Cassius had at one point told Lysander, he's like, this is how I'm going to go out. Like, please make your peace with it. This is an honorable death to fight to the death against this family. And he was like, I don't want you to intervene. You have already done enough by getting us here. Please just let me die honorably. And he doesn't let him do that, which like obviously I was happy about. I don't want Cassius to die. That was it, found it. They wanted the code to the safe for their ship. And so Lysander, to stop the fighting, tells the code. And that's how they found the razor that like actually identified who they were. And once they found out who they were, it's all coming together now. Once they found out who they were, that's when they killed Cassius, which I don't believe it for a second. Lysander wakes up and they're like, oh, by the way, we killed Cassius. And I was like, you absolutely did not. I know that he was bad off and he had battle wounds and all that, but I'm sorry. Like, if there's one thing I've learned in books, is that that person's not dead unless you see the body. Just being told that Cassius was dead and not seeing any type of proof. And when Lysander's like, hey, I would like to see proof, can I please see the body? They're like, oh, like some of our students took it and desecrated it. Because obviously he's hated, but I was like, that's a great excuse to not show him the corpse because it doesn't exist. Meanwhile, we go back to Ephraim and the kids in Lyria. Ephraim was betrayed by someone on his own team, and somehow Lyria manages to escape during this moment, which is like kind of crazy. But she does it, and she's like on the run from these people, who we find out is the Syndicate, which is like, I think, the new big bad of the second part of the series. Lyria, while she's on the run, ends up getting picked up by Holiday, who used to work with Ephraim. In fact, they are brother and sister-in-law. And Lyria, she truly feels bad that she lost Pax. Like, can you imagine looking at the Sovereign and being like, yeah, I lost your kid? Like, she feels truly horrible, and she still is very upset with Virginia, or Mustang, and all of the Golds, because they are the reason that her family's dead, and she doesn't want to forgive them. But she sort of ends up coming to like this kind of understanding with Mustang, and she just truly feels horrible about losing the kids, and she sort of like tries her best to help them figure out what's going on. She manages to ID Ephraim and realizes that he is not Philippe, he is Ephraim. And they figure out that the Syndicate has the kids. And Mustang is like, as panicked as I am, we cannot let anyone know that the syndicate has the kids, because people will start to think that that is obviously going to skew her judgment as a ruler or a leader. She's somewhere in between there. Ephraim, meanwhile, is horrible to Volga. They basically get off scot-free, like they leave. And Volga's like, why did you do it? Like, why did we take these kids? And he's so mean to her, basically telling her that the only reason he has kept her around is because she is essentially a really good guard dog. And he was like, I didn't keep you around for the conversation, which obviously really hurts her feelings. And I felt so bad for her. And we find out that she like went to the zoo, I think. Like, she went off by herself and she got picked up by Mustang's people. Ephraim was supposed to take a flight out of there, but when he boards the flight, Holiday's in there and she's like, well, we're also going to be going to see Mustang, so hold on to your hats. And he sees this footage of Volga captured and it really hurts him. Like, he didn't mean to say it, but like at the same time, that really was his opinion. So like, Ephraim's not a good guy. Like, I understand he's not meant to be like a good guy, but I was just like kind of sick of hanging out with him at this point, which I think we're meant to be. Like, I think a lot of this was done intentionally by Pierce Brown. We're not supposed to just love Ephraim as a character, but I was so annoyed with him at this moment. And they tell Ephraim, like, you're gonna go get our kids back if you want Volga and yourself to be freed. At this point, Mustang also apologizes to Lyria, and she's like, I understand that your family dying in like a horribly tragic way was in part her fault. And she asks for forgiveness, which I think was like really indicative of her character. I used to not really like Mustang. Like, when we first met her, I was like, I just don't feel much for her. But by the end of this book, I really felt like I understood her better and I like respected her more as just like a person, because she really is trying to do her best as a leader, and she recognizes that it is insanely difficult to balance all of this. Lyria forgives her, and so she ends up going off to her quarters or something, and then right at the end of like her section of the book, she gets like trank darted. I was so confused. We are told that she's being taken to House Barker, and I cannot remember that for the life of me. I don't remember who that is. Is that part of the syndicate? Like, I can't. She's called a traitor. And I'm like, who did she betray? Like, I can see how the Telematis family might be like kind of confused still about like why she set off a bomb in their ship or whatever. But like overall, I'm like, who did she betray? Like, she left the Reds, but it's not like there was anybody there for her to betray. I don't remember. And if you remember, I would truly, truly appreciate you letting me know in the comments, because I want to understand where we are heading into the next book, and I just don't right now. We finally get to the Ash Lord with Darrow and Sevro, minus multiple howlers. Like, we are losing people along the way here. And we find out that the Ash Lord is not this big war overlord that we used to see on TV. He's like a shriveled old man. He truly can't do anything. Like, he is on his deathbed, and he's telling Darrow, like, you know, you were a Red, but you're still a slave. Like, it doesn't matter what you're gonna do, because you're always gonna be a slave to someone. That hits Darrow pretty hard. And then he's like, yeah, you shouldn't have even come here. I haven't commanded an army in years. If you kill me, it will essentially mean nothing. The person you're actually after is my daughter, Atlantia. And I was like, I can't believe I ignored that note about her in the beginning of the book. I cannot believe it. And so we don't know where she is. And if we do know, it's not here. Like, it's far away. I think she's headed back to wherever Darrow lives now. Is it Loon? I can't remember. But she's headed back to our home base, which is super, super far away, and she has enough of a head start that she's gonna make it there. She's gonna kill everybody's family. Their kids are not gonna be there when they get back. Sevro is pissed, rightfully so. He told Darrow so many times, he was like, man, this is just like, I don't know about this plan. And he had Darrow's back the whole time because he's like backing his friend. And at some point he had told Darrow, like, this is a stupid idea. Like, why are we doing this? Why do we need to do this? And now we find out like Sevro was right. Like, we shouldn't have done this. It's like, even if they started back towards home right that second, they would be weeks too late to save their families. And most of the crew is like, let's go anyways. Like, there's a chance. Like, let's hold on to this. And Darrow is like, leave me behind. For what reason? I know that he doesn't think they're gonna make it, but I was just like, I didn't understand why he wanted to stay. I remember reading it. There was like, he's like, oh, I'm not gonna make it here, so I might as well do this. But what was this thing that he thought he needed to do? Because to me, there's like nothing else to do. Like if his wife is killed and someone else starts becoming the sovereign or whatever they want to be, like, what is the point? And he basically goes like Ripper mode from Vampire Diaries. He like, it feels like he's turning off his humanity. He's like, my family's gone and I am just going to become the Reaper again, which is sad and upsetting, but also like kind of a little exciting for the next book, because I really felt like Darrow in this book was not fully himself, and I understand why. It's because he has so much more to lose now. Like when he was, you know, baby Darrow and he had just been turned into a gold, he had wanted to die anyway. There was nothing for him to lose. And so now when he has his family, like he was second guessing himself every step of the way and stuff, which is understandable, just kind of annoying. And so now I'm glad that he's kind of like, all right, I've got nothing to lose again, because I feel like that's gonna bring back his like coolness a little bit. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but just like, I don't know, his ability to fight better and be at his best warrior self, because that's not what he felt like this book. Meanwhile, Seraphina's father is sentenced to death. Why? I forgot, but he is, and it's really upsetting because part of it is like, I think he goes out without his spacesuit on, and the goal is to like get to this monument thing, and he dies a couple feet from it and like freezes over. It's really upsetting. It was very good imagery, but just like really upsetting. Right before he left, Seraphina's dad had pulled Lysander over, and he's like, why do you want to talk to me? Like, your last moment should be with your family. And he's like, you saved my daughter, let's see if you can save the world. And I was like, is this going to be Lysander trying to become sovereign? Because in my opinion, Lysander doesn't seem like a leader really at all. I'm interested if this is like a villain. I'm interested if this is going to be like a villain origin story for him. Is Lysander not actually a good person? Would be very interesting if he's not, and he like has this whole villain arc, and then Cassius comes back and confronts him, because there's not a chance Cassius is dead. But anyway, because of this, Lysander has now made a deal with Seraphina's mom, who does seem like the type who might want to become sovereign. So I'm interested to see where that goes. Meanwhile, Ephraim is trying to save the kids and almost does it. And then like all the systems on the ship that he's on with the kids goes down. Like the kids are fighting their way out of there. Pax is not like a damsel in distress as a child. Like he knows how to fight, and obviously Victor and Severo's daughter, you know that she's gonna be crushing it as a warrior. And so they're like on their way out, and they have like a hostage. And they're gonna do it, and then all of a sudden, like all the systems shut down, and they start getting pulled back towards this ship, and there's nothing they can do about it. And we know that it's the Syndicate come to reclaim the kids, which leaves me to believe that the Syndicate is Atlantia. Is that completely off base? Like, please don't spoil me. But if that's wrong, like feel free to let me know in the comments. But like, it just seems to make sense that the two big looming things are actually the same person. So like the Syndicate and Atlantia, Ash Lord's successor, those being the same person makes sense to me, because we already know that Atlantia was on her way to kill the kids and the families and all like, okay, for the last 5 seconds of the video. It would just make sense to me if the Ash Lord's successor, Atlantia, and the Syndicate are the same person, because she was going back to get the kids anyway. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it makes sense in my mind for the big bad to be one thing and not two. But I feel like Pierce Brown does a really good job with like all these crazy storylines and different things. Like he has it all mapped out in his brain, and I'm trying my best to keep up, so maybe those are two different villains that we're gonna have to face off simultaneously. But that's the book. I enjoyed this as a setup. It was very different to see multiple point of views, and I'm interested to see where we go in the next book with them, because as far as my understanding goes, Ephraim is probably gonna get killed immediately, and Lyria is probably going to prison. She did do her best, but I think at the same time, like, it seems like she's gonna be in jail, or like she's not necessarily gonna be in like the best situation as a person. So yeah, now I have to read Dark Age and try and figure some of this stuff out. Overall, I do think Pierce Brown, like I love his writing style, even though there's a lot of battle scenes. I'm not really a battle scene person, so sometimes my brain skims over those a little bit, but I think like his dialogue is just absolutely hilarious. For such a dark story, there are so many moments of the characters saying stuff that it was just like so funny. And so I really appreciate those moments of light that he makes through the dialogue, because overall this is a very heavy story. I would love to know what your favorite part was. As always, I struggle to find a favorite part because I usually like funny scenes the most, and these books outside of the on occasion is not funny. Like the funniest dialogue that I can remember though that like truly made me laugh out loud was, I think Severo is fighting with someone about like whether or not horrible body odor has ever killed someone. And I know that doesn't sound funny when I say it, but like the way they were talking about it was just like, it was top notch. Like it was so funny. Like you can't prove that. Please like this video if you liked it. Click subscribe if you want to talk about more book stuff. My name's Caitlin. Thanks for watching. Bye.